For 10,000 years, the master of mankind has been a whisper in the warp, a flicker of agony bound to ancient machinery, a mind stretched across a million battlefronts unseen. Humanity calls him God. The ecclesiarchy preaches his divinity from hive spires that pierce poisoned skies. The Adeptus Custodes stand eternal vigil over a body that has not drawn breath since the betrayal of Horus. And yet what if that silence ended? What if, in the darkest hour of the Imperium's decay, in the age known as the wrath of the dying empire, the Emperor did not merely stir, but rose? Across the divided Imperium, reality is already fracturing. The Cicatrix Maledictum, that howling scar in existence, splits the galaxy in two. Warp storms isolate entire sectors. Astropaths burn out like candles in a hurricane. The enemies of mankind close in from every horizon. The ancient dynasties of the Necrons awaken tomb by tomb, their cold logic calculating humanity's extinction with mathematical patience. The great devourer, the Tyranids, descends in chitinous waves, each hive fleet a living apocalypse. From the Eye of Terror and beyond, the traitor legions of the Chaos Space Marines carve their bloody paths, guided by gods who thirst for the annihilation of all things. And on Terra, at the heart of a million shrines, the Emperor sits immobile, until he doesn't. It begins not with a whisper, but with a scream. Every psyker in the segmentum solar collapses in the same instant. Choirs bound in chains convulse as one. Navigators claw at their third eyes as the Astronomican flares, brighter than it has since the days of the Great Crusade. For a heartbeat, a single, impossible heartbeat, the warp grows still. On the golden throne, ancient systems shriek warnings in binaric cant. The mechanisms designed to sustain a corpse register something they were never meant to detect: restoration. Tissue once necrotic knits together. Withered muscle tightens around reforged bone. A psychic presence that has been stretched thin across 10 millennia contracts, and then expands outward in a pulse that ripples through the immaterium like a shockwave. In the deepest vaults of the imperial palace, the Adeptus Custodes fall to one knee without being commanded. Not from protocol, not from ritual, from instinct, because the presence they have guarded for 10,000 years is no longer distant. It is awake. The Emperor rises, not dragged upward by cables and pistons, not animated by arcane machinery, but standing under his own power. His form is radiant, not decayed. His eyes burn like twin stars. The air around him fractures with restrained psychic force. The golden throne, that monument to desperation, cracks beneath a surge of power it was never built to contain. And in that moment, across the breadth of the Imperium, miracles and catastrophes unfold simultaneously. Warp storms recede along major trade arteries, as if shoved aside by an unseen hand. Demonic incursions falter. Entities woven from nightmare unravel into smoke under the pressure of a will older and more disciplined than their own. On 100 besieged worlds, defenders look to the skies and see the Astronomican blaze with renewed fury, a beacon no longer flickering but roaring. But the warp is not empty. The dark gods feel it. In the depths of the immaterium, tides shift violently. The laughter of thirsting powers turns to snarls. The awakening of the Emperor is not merely a recovery, it is a challenge. For 10,000 years, his psychic might has been divided, shackled to the throne, forced into stalemate. Now that constraint is gone. For the first time since the siege of Terra, the Emperor is a free agent in a galaxy at war. On Macragge, Lord Commander Roboute Guilliman pauses mid, strategy briefing as a psychic tremor passes through him like a blade of ice. The Primarch has spoken with the Emperor before, in that fractured, agonizing communion within the throne room. He knows the weight of his father's mind. Across the Indomitus Crusade fleets, astropaths regain clarity with stunned disbelief. Messages once lost in the warp begin to cut through interference. Admirals who had resigned themselves to isolation receive coordinates long thought unreachable. It is as if a guiding hand has steadied the galaxy's compass, yet with illumination comes revelation. The Emperor sees everything. He sees an Imperium transformed into a theocracy in his name, though he once denounced superstition as poison. He sees cathedrals built upon the ruins of reason. He sees technology treated as divine relic rather than understood as science. He sees bureaucracies bloated beyond comprehension, entire sectors lost to inertia rather than invasion. And he sees faith, not the secular unity he once envisioned, but burning, fervent devotion, trillions upon trillions who believe, without doubt, that he is God. The master of mankind, who rejected godhood as a chain upon human potential, now stands at the center of a civilization that worships him as divine. Does he deny them? Does he shatter their faith and risk tearing the Imperium apart from within? Or does he embrace the mantle, weaponizing belief itself as a shield against chaos? Because here lies the terrible truth. Faith works. The warp responds to emotion, to conviction, to worship. The Emperor's divinity may have been an accident of 10,000 years of belief, but it is real. Saints have manifested in his name. Miracles have occurred under his sigil. Living embodiments of his will have walked battlefields wreathed in golden light. If he accepts godhood, his power could eclipse even the dark gods within their own realm. But at what cost? On Terra, High Lords scramble in panic as systems report the impossible. The Golden Throne's life-sustaining functions are no longer primary. Custodian Guard seal entire districts of the palace as word spreads through whispered channels. The Ecclesiarch receives a single message encoded in authority older than his office. The Emperor commands silence, not sermons, not celebration. Silence for now. Beyond human borders, other powers calculate. Within Stace, estombed beneath dying stars, the silent king turns his ancient gaze toward Terra. The Necrons recognize patterns in galactic energy fluctuations. They detect the surge within the warp. To beings who once shattered star gods and defied the old ones, the awakening of a human psychic god is not myth, it is threat assessment. If humanity regains its architect, its warlord, its greatest weapon, the balance of the galaxy shifts irrevocably. And the hive mind adapts. The Tyranids feel psychic luminosity like predators scenting blood in water. The Emperor's awakening is a beacon brighter than any Astronomican. To a species driven by consumption and evolution, such concentrated psychic biomass is irresistible. Hive fleets alter course. Far beyond the galactic rim, something vast takes notice. Yet for all the cosmic consequences, the most profound moment comes not on a battlefield, nor within the warp, but in a silent chamber beneath the imperial palace. Guilliman stands before his father once more. No machinery separates them now. No haze of suffering obscures the Emperor's gaze. For the first time in 10 millennia, father and son meet as beings of will and power. Guilliman has carried the Imperium upon his shoulders, seen its rot, felt its desperation. He has compromised with zealots. He has sanctioned brutality in the name of survival. He has accepted worship he knows his father despised. And now the architect of humanity's destiny stands restored. There is no embrace. There is judgment. Not condemnation, but assessment. The Emperor measures what his dream has become. He weighs Guilliman's choices. He calculates the path forward with a mind that once outmaneuvered gods and Primarchs alike. Outside, Terra trembles under psychic aftershocks. Inside, a decision looms that will define the fate of the galaxy. Because the Emperor did not awaken to preserve stagnation. He awakened to act, and when the master of mankind acts, civilizations burn. This is not salvation. This is escalation. The wrath of the dying empire has only just begun, and now, its central figure has entered the board not as a relic, but as a player. And somewhere, deep within the Imperium, 4 ancient powers stir with something they have not felt in an age long forgotten. From the throne world, a psychic command ripples outward, silent yet undeniable. Across Terra, every cathedral bell shatters at once. Stained glass windows depicting a haloed, beatific god. Emperor fracture into glittering dust. Statues weep molten tears as their forms crack under an unseen pressure. Priests sermon choke on their own words as a presence like a blazing sun presses against their souls. The Emperor speaks, not aloud, but into the marrow of humanity itself. I am not your God. The words are not rage. They are not denial born of pride. They are correction, absolute and immovable. And in that correction, entire power structures begin to collapse. The ecclesiarchy, cornerstone of imperial unity for 10,000 years, trembles. Cardinals convene emergency synods. Some declare the voice a test of faith, a divine trial meant to separate the true believers from the weak. Others fall to their knees in ecstatic terror, proclaiming that only a true God would deny his own divinity to humble his flock. But faith is not so easily extinguished. On shrine worlds, riots ignite. Pilgrims clash with enforcers. Entire congregations refuse to accept the emperor's proclamation, insisting that the denial itself is sacred scripture unfolding. The more he rejects godhood, the more fervently they cling to it. The emperor watches, and he realizes a truth more bitter than betrayal. Belief cannot be undone by decree. Meanwhile, Guilliman stands at the center of a storm he always knew would come. He understands his father's intent to return humanity to rationality, to tear down the superstitious stagnation choking progress. But Guilliman also understands politics, logistics, and the fragile psychology of a species besieged from all sides. Father, he warns, if you shatter their faith outright, the Imperium will fracture beyond repair. The Emperor's gaze is colder than voidstone. Then it was already broken. For 10,000 years, he has endured unending agony to preserve humanity's future. He did not do so to inherit a civilization petrified by dogma. And so, he begins the reformation. Orders cascade from Terra with impossible speed. Forbidden technologies are unsealed. Vaults beneath Mars, locked since the Heresy, are opened under his direct authority. The priesthood of Mars protests. The cult Mechanicus has long treated innovation as heresy. But when the Emperor himself transmits schematics encoded in knowledge older than their oldest archives, resistance falters. Ancient standard template constructs once thought myth are reactivated. Production lines shift from ritualized repetition to adaptive engineering. The first true technological renaissance in 10 millennia ignites like a wildfire. The Imperium begins to move again. Not shuffle, move, and that movement sends shockwaves beyond human space. Within their tomb complexes, the Necrons detect a disturbing anomaly. Human technological output rising at exponential rates. Energy signatures shift. Fleet formations grow more efficient. Psychic resonance intensifies in coordinated patterns rather than chaotic bursts of faith. The Silent King has seen species ascend before. He will not allow it again. Elsewhere, the hive mind tightens its focus. The Tyranids feel the Emperor's psychic suppression pushing against the warp, disrupting currents they exploit for navigation and invasion. To them, he is not a deity. He is prey of unprecedented magnitude. Hive fleet tendrils alter vector towards segmentum solar. Bioships accelerate, evolving specialized synapse creatures adapted to counter psychic dominance. The Devourer does not hate. It optimizes, and in the eye of terror, laughter turns to fury. The Chaos Gods have fed on humanity's excess for millennia, on its fear, its blind devotion, its fanaticism. A rational, unified Imperium under a fully awakened Emperor threatens not only their armies, but their sustenance. The Chaos Space Marines receive visions of burning Terra, and a radiant figure striding across battlefields like a second star. Demon Primarchs stir within their hell-forged realms. Abaddon the Despoiler feels destiny shifting beneath his feet. A final Black Crusade begins to coalesce, not of opportunism, but desperation. Back on Terra, the Emperor undertakes something far more dangerous than war. He summons the faithful, not the High Lords, not the generals, the living saints. Across the Imperium, individuals touched by miracles, warriors wreathed in golden fire, martyrs who rose again, prophets whose words reshaped worlds, are drawn toward Terra by dreams they cannot resist. They kneel before the Emperor expecting validation. Instead, they feel his scrutiny like a blade against their souls. He studies them not as divine instruments, but as phenomena. Faith has empowered them. Collective belief has reshaped the warp in his image. Humanity has, in essence, created a god through sheer psychic weight. A new doctrine spreads, not through sermons, but through subtle psychic influence. The message evolves. The Emperor is not a god to be adored. He is the pinnacle of human potential. A symbol not of submission, but of ascension. Worship shifts toward emulation, strength, discipline. Unity, psychic awakening. Humanity begins to change. Across hive worlds, children manifest latent psychic abilities in unprecedented numbers. Under the Emperor's guidance, these gifts are trained rather than sacrificed. The black ships still sail, but now they deliver recruits, not merely fuel for the throne. An army of sanctioned psychers grows, coordinated through a psychic lattice the Emperor constructs within the warp itself. A network of human minds harmonized instead of screaming in isolation. The Astronomican transforms. No longer a desperate beacon powered by agony, it becomes a chorus, a controlled, symphonic projection of collective will. And for the first time in 10,000 years, the warp near Terra grows calm. But calm seas invite storms. On the fringes of the galaxy, the first Tyranid vanguard fleet collides with reinforced Imperial defenses. The battle is unlike any before it. Where once human forces fought reactively, they now anticipate synaptic shifts before they occur. The Emperor's psychic presence guides admirals in real time, predicting enemy adaptations moments before they manifest. Bio-titans fall beneath coordinated volleys enhanced by prescient targeting. Psychic shockwaves disrupt the hive mind's cohesion. Entire swarms turn feral as synapse links are severed by a will stronger than their own. For the first time, a Tyranid fleet retreats. The galaxy notices. Hope spreads like wildfire, and hope, in the grim darkness of the far future, is the most volatile force of all. Guilliman watches these transformations with awe tempered by dread. He sees humanity strengthening, innovating, unifying. He sees his father closer than ever to achieving the dream of the Great Crusade, but he also sees something else. The Emperor is not merely restoring the past, he is accelerating evolution. Human psychic potential is being cultivated deliberately. Worlds resistant to reform are subjected to uncompromising correction. Governors who cling to corruption vanish overnight, replaced by leaders selected through methods no one fully understands. Efficiency increases, freedom decreases. The Emperor's vision has always been clear. A united humanity capable of standing against the horrors of the galaxy without superstition or weakness. Now he has the power to enforce it absolutely, and absolute power reshapes reality. In the warp, the Chaos Gods rage as their influence wanes near human space. But they are eternal, they adapt in their own ways. Cults flare violently in regions beyond the Emperor's immediate reach. Warp storms intensify at the galaxy's edge. Demon Primarchs prepare invasions not of territory, but of ideology, spreading corruption where reform has yet to take root. This is no longer a defensive war. It is a war for the human soul. And as the Emperor stands upon the ramparts of the Imperial Palace, gazing into a sky no longer dimmed by despair, one truth becomes undeniable. He has returned not to save the Imperium as it was. He has returned to transform it into